The bruise on my cheek had faded to a sickly yellow-green, but I still winced when I accidentally brushed it with my fingertips while washing my face. The cold water stung against my skin, a sharp reminder of the price I'd paid for trying to leave. I patted my face dry with a soft towel, softer than anything I'd ever owned, and examined my reflection in the ornate bathroom mirror. 3 more months, I whispered to myself. Just 3 more months and I'll have enough. The marble bathroom gleamed under the soft lighting, everything pristine and expensive, a stark contrast to the dingy apartment I'd shared with Devon until 2 weeks ago. I straightened my uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron, and practiced my neutral expression, the one that made me invisible to the wealthy, the one that had kept me safe in this house for the past 10 days. I left the bathroom and made my way through the expansive hallway of the mansion, my footsteps silent against the plush carpet. The house was quiet this morning, the staff moving like ghosts, everyone careful not to disturb Mr. Salvatore. He had returned late last night, his arrival marked by the soft purr of an expensive engine and hushed, urgent voices in the foyer. The kitchen was already bustling with activity when I arrived. Mrs. Petrelli, the head housekeeper, looked up from her clipboard and frowned at me. "Elena, you're late. Mr. Salvatore's breakfast tray needs to be prepared immediately." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Petrelli," I murmured, moving quickly to the counter where the chef had already arranged the food. "Remember, not a word unless spoken to directly," she reminded me, her eyes softening slightly as they lingered on my cheek. She knew, of course. The entire staff probably did, but no one asked questions in this house. I arranged the silver tray carefully. Espresso with a small pitcher of warm milk, sliced fruit, freshly baked bread, and the morning newspaper, folded precisely how he preferred it. My hands trembled slightly, as they did every morning when I was assigned this task. Taking a deep breath, I lifted the tray and made my way upstairs to the west wing, where Mr. Salvatore's private quarters were located. 2 men in dark suits stood outside his door, their expressions impassive. One of them, Marco, nodded slightly and knocked on the door before opening it for me. "Breakfast, sir," he announced, and I entered the room, keeping my eyes lowered. The bedroom was cast in shadows, heavy curtains blocking out the morning light. I could make out Mr. Salvatore's silhouette by the window, where a sliver of sunlight had managed to break through. He was already dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, his back to me as he spoke quietly into his phone in rapid Italian. I set the tray down on the table by the window, careful not to make any noise that might interrupt his call. As I straightened, I felt it. That prickling sensation along my spine that told me I was being watched. Mr. Salvatore had turned, his phone call apparently finished, and was now looking directly at me. "Thank you," he said, his voice deep and accented. It was only the second time I'd heard him speak directly to me. I nodded, keeping my eyes down, and turned to leave. Wait. The command froze me in place. My heart hammered against my ribs as I heard his footsteps approaching. He moved with surprising grace for a man of his size, each step deliberate and controlled. "Look at me," he said. I slowly raised my eyes, meeting his gaze for the first time. "Mr." Salvatore was younger than I had expected, perhaps in his late 30s, with sharp features and eyes so dark they appeared almost black. A thin scar ran along his jawline, disappearing into the collar of his shirt. He was studying my face with an intensity that made me want to shrink away. "Who hurt you?" he asked, his voice surprisingly soft. The question caught me off guard. No one had asked me that directly, not even when I'd shown up at the employment agency with a black eye and desperation radiating from every pore. "No one, sir," I replied automatically, the lie practiced and familiar on my tongue. His eyes narrowed slightly, and I watched as his jaw tightened. He didn't believe me. That much was clear. But I hadn't expected him to care. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs at the table. Panic fluttered in my chest. Had I done something wrong? Was he going to fire me? I couldn't lose this job. The pay was better than anything I could find elsewhere, and I needed every penny to start over. I perched on the edge of the chair, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Mr. Salvatore poured himself a cup of espresso, adding a splash of milk before sitting across from me. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. "How long have you worked in my home?" he finally asked, taking a sip of his coffee. 10 days, sir." He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "And before that?" "I worked at the Hastings Hotel for 3 years, sir." "As a maid?" "Yes, sir." His dark eyes never left my face, and I had the unsettling feeling that he was cataloging every flinch, every micro-expression. People said Antonio Salvatore could smell a lie from a mile away. That was one of the reasons he'd survived in his position for so long while his rivals had fallen. Everyone knew who he was, even if no one spoke of it directly. The police had never been able to pin anything concrete on him, but his name was whispered with fear and respect throughout the city. He controlled everything from construction to nightclubs, with rumors of darker enterprises lurking beneath the legitimate businesses. "Do you have family here?" he asked, breaking into my thoughts. "No, sir." "Friends?" I hesitated, thinking of Devin. Was he still looking for me? Had he found the new apartment I'd rented but never moved into? "No, sir," I said finally. Mr. Salvatore leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "Who are you running from, Elena?" The sound of my name on his lips sent a chill down my spine. I hadn't realized he knew it. "I'm not," I began, but the lie died in my throat when his hand came down on the table, not with a slam, but with deliberate control that was somehow more frightening. "Do not lie to me," he said quietly. "Not in my home. Not when I'm trying to help you." "Help me?" The concept was so foreign that I almost laughed. No one helped anyone without expecting something in return. I'd learned that lesson too many times to count. "It's personal, sir," I managed to say, and resolved. "It won't affect my work here." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "Very well. You may go." I rose quickly, relieved to be dismissed, but as I reached the door, his voice stopped me again. "Elena, if someone is threatening you, I should know about it. The safety of everyone in this house is my responsibility." I turned slightly, not quite meeting his eyes. "Thank you for your concern, sir, but I can handle my own problems." Something like amusement flickered across his face. "I'm sure you can. But remember, not all problems need to be faced alone." I slipped out of the room before he could say anything else, my heart racing as if I'd narrowly escaped some invisible danger. Mrs. Petrelli was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, her expression anxious. "Is everything all right?" she asked quietly. "You were in there for some time." "Fine," I assured her, forcing a smile. "He just had some questions about the service." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded and directed me to help with cleaning the guest rooms. I spent the rest of the morning trying to forget the intensity of Mr. Salvatore's gaze, the way he'd seen right through my lies. And most disturbingly, the strange offer of help from a man who was said to have none of the softer emotions. It was late afternoon when the doorbell rang, an unusual occurrence in a house where visitors were rare and always expected. I was dusting the library shelves when I heard raised voices from the foyer, followed by heavy footsteps approaching. I stepped back into the shadows between the bookshelves, suddenly unwilling to be seen. "Told you she wasn't here," Mr. Salvatore's voice, cold and hard, unlike the tone he'd used with me that morning. "I know she's working for you, Salvatore. One of your guys recruited her from the hotel." Another voice, familiar enough to send ice through my veins. "Devin." I pressed myself against the bookshelf, trying to make myself smaller, invisible. How had he found me? I'd been so careful, leaving no forwarding address, changing my phone number, even dyeing my hair a different color. "I employ many people," Mr. Salvatore replied calmly, "and I don't make their personal information available to anyone who comes asking." "Look, man, she's my girlfriend. We had a fight, she overreacted and took off. I just want to talk to her." "If she wanted to talk to you, she would have answered your calls." There was a moment of tense silence, and I held my breath, picturing Devin's face reddening with anger as it always did before he exploded. "You don't understand. She owes me. She took something that belongs to me." I closed my eyes, shame washing over me. I hadn't taken anything that wasn't rightfully mine, just the money I'd earned and saved, the money he'd tried to take from me when I said I was leaving. But Devin never saw it that way. In his mind, everything I had belonged to him. I think we're done here, Mr. Salvatore said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Marco will show you out. This isn't over, Devon spat. Tell that bitch I'll find her, with or without your help. I heard the sound of a scuffle, followed by a thud and a muffled cry of pain. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. Let me be very clear, Mr. Salvatore said, so quietly I had to strain to hear. If you come to my home again, if you threaten anyone under my protection, you won't live to regret it. Do you understand? There was no response, but a moment later, I heard the front door open and close. I remained frozen in place, trembling until the library door opened and light spilled into the darkened room. You can come out now, Mr. Salvatore said, his silhouette framed in the doorway. Slowly, I stepped out from between the bookshelves, my legs unsteady beneath me. How did you know I was here? I asked. A slight smile curved his lips. I make it my business to know who's in my house at all times. The smile faded as he studied my face. Was that the man who hurt you? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Mr. Salvatore crossed the room to stand before me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle, with notes of sandalwood and spice. Tell me everything, he said. It wasn't a request. The library suddenly felt too small, the air between us charged with an intensity I couldn't name. Mr. Salvatore gestured toward a pair of leather armchairs by the fireplace. Sit, he said, his voice gentler than before. Please. I sank into one of the chairs, the soft leather enveloping me like an embrace. Mr. Salvatore remained standing, his imposing figure silhouetted against the window. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured grounds. Would you like a drink? He asked, moving to a cabinet that I now realized housed a small bar. I shook my head. No, thank you, sir. He poured himself a glass of amber liquid. Whiskey, I guessed, and took the seat across from me. He didn't pressure me to speak immediately, just waited, his dark eyes patient but unwavering. His name is Devon Miller, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. We were together for almost 2 years. Mr. Salvatore nodded, encouraging me to continue. We met at the hotel. He worked security. I twisted my hands in my lap, remembering how charming Devon had been at first, how safe I'd felt with him after years of being on my own. Things were good in the beginning. He was kind, protective, said he wanted to take care of me. I laughed bitterly. I should have known better. My mother went through 3 husbands just like him, sweet until they had you trapped, then controlling, then violent. Salvatore's expression didn't change, but I noticed his grip tighten slightly on his glass. When did it start? He asked. 6 months in. Small things at first. Checking my phone, telling me what to wear, getting angry if I talked to male guests at the hotel. I swallowed hard. Then he lost his job. He'd been drinking on duty. After that, it got worse. I fell silent, unable to put into words the gradual erosion of my freedom, my sense of self. How I'd started walking on eggshells. How I'd learned to gauge his moods from the sound of his footsteps. How I'd become a ghost in my own life. The money? Mr. Salvatore prompted. I had been saving in secret a little each week. Nearly $8,000. I closed my eyes, remembering the moment Devon had found the cash, hidden inside a hollowed-out book. I was going to leave, start over somewhere he couldn't find me. When he discovered it, he said I'd stolen from him, that everything I earned belonged to us, to him. When I tried to take it back, I gestured vaguely to my face. And you ran, Mr. Salvatore finished for me. I nodded. I got away with about half the money, enough to rent a room and pay the security deposit on a new apartment across town. I changed my phone number, my email, even dyed my hair. I touched the brown strands that had once been blonde. I thought I'd covered my tracks. You did well, Mr. Salvatore said, surprising me with the approval in his voice. But men like him don't give up easily. How did he find me? Probably followed one of my drivers. We'll be more careful going forward. He set his glass down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. The intensity in his eyes made me nervous, but I nodded, Is there anything else I should know about this man? Any connections? Any reason beyond the money that he might be so determined to find you? I hesitated. Shame burning through me again. There might be. Mr. Salvatore waited silently. Before I left, I found something in his phone. Messages about shipments, meetings in places I knew weren't legal. Names I recognized from the news. I took a deep breath. I think Devon might be involved with the Castillo organization. A flash of something dangerous crossed Mr. Salvatore's face. The Castillos were his main rivals in the city, a vicious gang known for drug trafficking and extreme violence. Did you report what you found to anyone? He asked, his voice carefully controlled. I shook my head quickly. No, I just wanted to get away. I didn't want any part of it. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied with my sincerity. Good. That was wise. The door to the library opened, and Marco appeared, his expression grave. Sir, a moment? Mr. Salvatore rose and stepped aside with his bodyguard, their voices too low for me to hear. I watched as his face hardened, his jaw clenching. When he returned to me, his demeanor had changed, a cold fury simmering beneath his controlled exterior. Your former boyfriend has been busy, he said. He's filed a police report claiming you stole from him. There's a warrant out for your arrest. The blood drained from my face. But that's not true. The money was mine. I earned it. I believe you, Mr. Salvatore said firmly, but it complicates matters. He paced in front of the fireplace, deep in thought. You'll stay here for now. It's safer. I can't hide forever, I protested weakly. He turned to me, his expression softening slightly. No, you can't, and you won't have to. I'll handle this. A chill ran down my spine. What does that mean? It means you should trust me, Elena. He checked his watch. I have matters to attend to. Marco will escort you to a guest room in the East Wing. You'll be comfortable there until we resolve this situation. But my job... Consider yourself on paid leave. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I think we can both agree that you've graduated from housekeeping duties. Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me alone with Marco, who stood by the door with an impassive expression. This way, miss, he said, gesturing for me to follow. The room Marco led me to was more luxurious than any I'd ever stayed in, with a 4-poster bed, silk curtains, and a private bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. He informed me that dinner would be brought up shortly, and that I was free to use anything in the room, but advised against wandering the house. For your safety, he explained, though his tone suggested it wasn't a suggestion. Left alone, I explored my gilded cage, running my fingers over expensive fabrics and delicate ornaments. I found a closet full of women's clothing in approximately my size, which raised questions I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. Had Mr. Salvatore housed other women here? Was I simply the latest in a line of strays he'd taken in? I showered and changed into a simple sweater and jeans from the closet, marveling at the perfect fit. A knock at the door announced dinner, a tray of exquisitely prepared food that I barely tasted. My stomach knotted with anxiety. What had I gotten myself into? Mr. Salvatore might have seemed concerned for my welfare, but I wasn't naive enough to believe his help came without a price. Night fell, and with it came the sounds of vehicles arriving at the mansion, voices in the hallway, doors opening and closing. I tried to sleep, but found myself staring at the ceiling, watching shadows dance across it from the moonlight filtering through the curtains. Around midnight, another knock came at my door. I wrapped myself in a robe and opened it to find Mrs. Petrelli, her usual stern expression replaced with concern. Mr. Salvatore would like to see you in his study, she said, her eyes taking in my disheveled appearance. Are you all right, dear? Just tired, I assured her, though it was far from the truth. She nodded, unconvinced. I'll wait while you dress. 5 minutes later, I followed her through the darkened house to a part of the mansion I hadn't been to before. The study was a large room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, and several seating areas. Mr. Salvatore stood by the windows, looking out at the night. He'd removed his suit jacket and tie, and his white shirt was rolled up at the sleeves, revealing strong forearms and the edge of what looked like a tattoo. Thank you, Mrs. Petrelli, he said without turning. That will be all. The housekeeper squeezed my hand briefly before leaving. closing the door behind her. Mr. Salvatore turned to face me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "I apologize for the late hour," he said, "but there have been developments you should know about." I remained near the door, suddenly aware of how alone we were. "What kind of developments?" He gestured to one of the leather couches. "Please sit. Would you like something to drink? Tea, perhaps?" I shook my head but moved to sit where he'd indicated. He took a seat across from me, his movements fluid and controlled. "I've learned more about your ex-boyfriend," he said. "Devin Miller is more deeply involved with the Castillos than you realized. He's been working as a courier and enforcer for the past 3 years, even while employed at the hotel." My stomach dropped. "I had no idea. I believe you." He leaned forward. "What concerns me is that he seems unusually determined to find you. The theft accusation is clearly false, a way to use the authorities to track you down. But why go to such lengths?" I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the room. Maybe he's just angry. Devin doesn't like to lose, and he definitely doesn't like to be defied. Mr. Salvatore shook his head. "It's more than that. Men like Miller cut their losses and move on. Unless what?" I prompted when he fell silent. His dark eyes met mine. "Unless you know something that could damage him or his employers." I thought back to the messages I'd seen, trying to remember details. There were coordinates in some of the texts, times and dates. Something about a shipment coming in through the northern docks next week. Mr. Salvatore's expression sharpened with interest. "Do you remember the exact date?" I closed my eyes, focusing. "The 17th, and a time, 2:30 a.m. He stood abruptly, moving to his desk and making a note. "Anything else? Any names? Locations?" Someone named Vega was mentioned several times, and there was something about a warehouse in Riverport. I watched as he wrote everything down. "Why is this important to you?" He looked up, his expression guarded. "Let's just say I have a vested interest in the Castillo's activities. Information like this is valuable." A realization dawned on me. "You're using me." "I'm helping you," he corrected. "And you're helping me in return. That's how the world works, Elena." I stood, anger flaring despite my better judgment. "So what happens after you get what you want? You hand me over to Devin with a pretty bow?" In an instant, he was in front of me, moving with that surprising speed that belied his size. His hands gripped my upper arms, not painfully but firmly enough that I couldn't pull away. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice low and intense. "I have never, in my entire life, betrayed someone under my protection. Not once. Not ever." His eyes burned into mine. "I don't know what stories you've heard about me, but understand this. I have a code. And that code means that once you're under my protection, nothing touches you without going through me first." The conviction in his voice was so absolute that I found myself believing him, despite everything I knew about men like him. Men who lived in the shadows, who dealt in power and violence. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you protect someone like me?" His grip softened, and something shifted in his expression. "Because you remind me of someone I couldn't save once." He released me and stepped back. "But that's not a story for tonight." Before I could ask more, his phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. "I have to take this." He moved toward the door. "Stay here. I'll be back shortly." Alone in the study, I sank back onto the couch, my mind racing. I looked around the room, seeing it properly for the first time. The leather-bound books, the antique chess set on a side table, the paintings that I suspected were originals rather than reproductions. Everything spoke of wealth, power, and refined taste. On Mr. Salvatore's desk, I noticed a framed photograph. Curious, I approached it. The picture showed a much younger Antonio Salvatore, with his arm around a woman who bore a striking resemblance to me. The same dark hair, similar features. Between them stood a little girl of perhaps 5 or 6, beaming at the camera. "My sister and my niece." Mr. Salvatore's voice came from behind me, startling me. I hadn't heard him return. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, stepping away from the desk. "I didn't mean to pry. It's all right." He moved to the desk and picked up the frame, looking at it with an expression I couldn't quite read. Grief, perhaps, or regret. They died 10 years ago. Car accident. I'm so sorry, I said again, this time meaning it. He set the photograph down carefully. The past is the past. We're here to discuss your future. He turned to face me fully. I have a proposition for you, Elena. My pulse quickened at his words. A proposition. I'd heard that phrase before, usually preceding something I wanted no part of. What kind of proposition? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mr. Salvatore gestured for me to sit again, his expression reassuring. Nothing untoward, I promise you. Please hear me out. I returned to the couch reluctantly, perching on the edge as if ready to flee. He remained standing, hands in his pockets, watching me with those penetrating dark eyes. I believe we can help each other, he began. You need protection from Devin Miller and the legal trouble he's created for you. I need information about the Castillo's operations. I've already told you everything I know, I said. He shook his head. You've told me what you remember consciously. But the human mind absorbs more than we realize. Names, patterns, locations. You likely heard or saw things during your relationship that you didn't recognize as significant. I considered this. It was true that Devin had often spoken on the phone in my presence, apparently unconcerned about what I might overhear. I'd learned to tune him out, focusing on my own thoughts to escape the reality of my situation. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Stay here, under my protection, for the next month. Work with me to recall anything that might be useful. In return, I'll clear your name with the authorities and ensure Devin Miller never troubles you again. His voice took on a harder edge with the last words. And after the month? After that, you're free to go wherever you wish. I'll provide you with enough money to start fresh in another city, if that's what you want. He paused. Or you could stay and work for me in a more official capacity. As what? Your maid? The words came out more bitterly than I'd intended. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. I was thinking more along the lines of my assistant. You're observant, intelligent, and discreet, qualities I value highly. I stared at him, searching for the catch, the hidden motive. Men like Antonio Salvatore didn't offer deals like this without expecting something in return, something more than information about rivals. Why do you look at me that way? He asked softly. Because I'm trying to understand what you really want from me, I answered honestly. He crossed the room to a cabinet and poured himself a drink. What I want, Elena, is exactly what I've said. Your help against the Castillos, and in return, my protection and resources. He took a sip, then added, If you're concerned about other expectations, don't be. I don't mix business with pleasure, and I certainly don't prey on women in vulnerable positions. Despite everything, I believed him. There was something in his eyes, a directness, an old-fashioned sense of honor, perhaps, that rang true. All right, I said finally. 1 month. Relief flickered across his face, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Good. We'll begin tomorrow. For now, you should rest. He set his glass down. I'll have Marco escort you back to your room. As if summoned by his name, the bodyguard appeared at the door. I rose to follow him, but paused, turning back to Mr. Salvatore. Thank you, I said quietly, for believing me when no one else would. Something softened in his expression. Sometimes, Elena, the people who deserve belief the most are those who've been told their truth doesn't matter. With those words lingering in the air between us, I left, following Marco back through the silent house to my room. Sleep came easier this time, though my dreams were troubled, filled with shadows, and the sound of Devin's voice calling my name from somewhere just out of sight. The next morning brought bright sunshine streaming through the windows and a knock at my door. Mrs. Petrelli entered with a tray of breakfast and a garment bag. Mr. Salvatore thought you might prefer something other than your uniform today, she said, hanging the bag in the closet. He'll see you in the study at 10. I ate quickly, then showered and opened the garment bag to find a simple but elegant blouse and trousers in soft gray with matching flats. They fit perfectly, of course. I wondered briefly if Mr. Salvatore had chosen them himself, or delegated the task to Mrs. Petrelli. At precisely 10 o'clock, I knocked on the study door. Come in, Mr. Salvatore called. He was seated at his desk, papers spread before him, but rose when I entered. He looked rested, impeccable in another perfectly tailored suit, this one a deep navy. "Good morning," he said. "I trust you slept well?" "Well enough," I replied, taking the seat he indicated across from his desk. "I've made some arrangements," he began without preamble. "First, regarding your legal situation. My lawyer has contacted the detective handling your case and provided bank records proving that the money in question was yours. The theft charge should be dropped by the end of the day." Relief washed through me. "Thank you. That's incredible." He waved away my thanks. "It's a simple matter to prove the truth when one has the right resources." He picked up a folder and handed it to me. "These are documents establishing a new identity for you. Elena Russo is now officially employed as my personal assistant, with a work history that will stand up to scrutiny." I opened the folder, stunned by the thoroughness of the documents inside. A contract of employment dated 6 months prior, pay stubs, even a company ID card with my photograph. "How did you do this so quickly?" A slight smile. "I have connections." Of course he did. I closed the folder, a new thought occurring to me. What about outside? Am I a prisoner here? His expression darkened. "You're my guest, not my captive. But for your own safety, I'd prefer you not leave the grounds unaccompanied for the time being. Miller is still looking for you, and the Castillos have eyes everywhere in this city." I nodded, understanding the reality of my situation. I was safer here, behind these walls, with armed men guarding the perimeter, than I would be anywhere else. "Now," he said, his tone shifting to businesslike, "let's talk about what you know about the Castillos." For the next several hours, Mr. Salvatore questioned me meticulously about everything I'd seen or heard during my time with Devon. He was patient but thorough, circling back to the same events from different angles, helping me remember details I hadn't realized I'd retained, snippets of phone conversations, names scribbled on scraps of paper, places Devon had disappeared to at odd hours. By lunchtime, my head was spinning, but Mr. Salvatore seemed pleased with our progress. We ate in the study, simple sandwiches brought in by Mrs. Petrelli, and then continued our work until late afternoon. "That's enough for today," he said finally, noticing my fatigue. "You've done well, Elena." "Have I actually helped?" I asked, rubbing my temples. He nodded, arranging the notes he'd taken into a neat stack. "More than you know. The information about the shipment at the northern docks alone is invaluable." I studied him across the desk, curiosity overcoming my tiredness. "Why are you so interested in the Castillos? Is it just business rivalry or is it something more?" For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden below, his back to me. "Victor Castillo and I have history," he said finally. "Personal history." "The car accident," I guessed, remembering the photograph of his sister and niece. He turned, surprise evident in his expression. "You're perceptive." A beat of silence. "Yes, the accident, except it wasn't an accident. My sister had witnessed something she shouldn't have, a murder committed by Victor's eldest son. They silenced her and my niece, made it look like a drunk driver." Horror washed through me. "That's terrible. I'm so sorry." "It was a long time ago," he said, but the tension in his jaw belied the casual words. "I've spent the past decade dismantling Victor's empire piece by piece. The shipment you've helped me identify will be another significant blow." "What will you do with the information?" I asked, not entirely sure I wanted to know the answer. "Nothing that need concern you," he replied, his tone gentle but final. "The less you know about certain aspects of my business, the better." I nodded, understanding the boundaries he was setting. Whatever retribution he planned for the Castillos, he wanted to shield me from it. The days fell into a pattern after that. Mornings and afternoons were spent in the study, where I worked with Mr. Salvatore to piece together everything I knew about Devon's connections to the Castillos. Evenings were mine to spend as I wished, though always within the grounds of the estate. I explored the extensive library, discovered a small art studio tucked away on the 3rd floor, and even ventured into the gardens under the watchful eye of Marco, or one of the other security men. Gradually, I found myself relaxing into this strange new life. The bruise on my face faded completely, and with it, some of the fear that had been my constant companion for so long. I slept better, ate more, even laughed occasionally at Mrs. Petrelli's dry observations about the other staff. And then there was Mr. Salvatore himself. I began to see beyond the fearsome reputation to the man beneath. Intelligent, disciplined, surprisingly well-read. He spoke 4 languages fluently, played chess like a grandmaster, and could discuss everything from Renaissance art to quantum physics with equal ease. During our sessions in the study, he was all business, focused entirely on the task at hand. But sometimes, in the evenings, he would invite me to join him for dinner, and our conversations would range far beyond the Castillos and their operations. "You never talk about your family," he remarked one evening, as we shared a meal in the smaller, more intimate dining room, "except to mention your mother briefly." I toyed with my wine glass, considering how to respond. "There's not much to tell. My father left when I was 3. My mother raised me alone, more or less, between her various relationships. She died 5 years ago, cancer." "I'm sorry," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "No siblings?" I shook my head. "Just me. What about you? Beyond your sister, I mean." A shadow crossed his face. "My parents died when I was young. My sister, Sophia, was 10 years older. She practically raised me." He refilled my glass. "After she died, I had no one. Except Lucia, my niece, and she was gone too." The sadness in his voice made me reach across the table impulsively, touching his hand. "I'm sorry, Antonio. It was the first time I'd used his first name, and it felt strange on my tongue, intimate somehow." He looked startled for a moment, then turned his hand to grasp mine briefly. "Thank you, Elena." The moment stretched between us, charged with something I wasn't ready to name. Then he withdrew his hand and the conversation moved on to lighter topics. It was nearly 2 weeks into my stay when everything changed. I was in the library, reading, when I heard a commotion in the foyer, raised voices, hurried footsteps. Curious, I moved to the doorway just as Antonio rushed past, flanked by Marco and 2 other security men. "What's happening?" I called after him. He paused, turning back. "Stay inside. Lock the doors. Don't come out until I return." His expression was grimmer than I'd ever seen it. "Antonio, what?" "Just do as I say, Elena, please." Before I could say more, he was gone, the front door slamming behind him. I stood frozen for a moment, then did as he'd asked, locking the library doors and retreating to one of the window seats where I could see the driveway. 2 black SUVs were peeling away, tires throwing up gravel. Behind them, the security team at the gate was doubling, men with weapons appearing where before they'd been discreetly out of sight. Something was very wrong. Hours passed with no word. Mrs. Petrelli brought me dinner in the library, her usual composure fractured with worry. "What's going on?" I asked her. She shook her head. "I don't know details, only that there was an incident in the city. Mr. Salvatore was very clear that you were to remain inside and protected." She patted my hand. "Try not to worry. He can take care of himself." But I did worry. Increasingly as night fell, and there was still no sign of Antonio or his men. I paced the library, unable to focus on reading or any other distraction. When the clock on the mantel struck midnight, I gave up on waiting and decided to go to my room. I had just reached the grand staircase when the front door opened. Antonio stepped inside, and my heart lurched at the sight of him. His suit was disheveled, his tie gone, and there was blood on his white shirt. A lot of it. "Oh my God," I gasped, rushing down the stairs. "Are you hurt?" He looked up, surprise crossing his features when he saw me. "Elena, I thought you'd be asleep. Are you hurt?" I repeated, reaching him and scanning for injuries. "It's not my blood," he said quietly. His eyes were dark, haunted. "I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. I could see it in the slight tremor of his hands, the tension in his shoulders. Whatever had happened in the city had shaken him. "Come," I said, taking his arm. "You need to sit down." He allowed me to lead him to the study, where I guided him to the couch and then went to the cabinet where I knew he kept his whiskey. I poured a generous measure and brought it to him. "Drink," I instructed. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Giving orders now?" "Someone has to," I replied, sitting beside him. What happened, Antonio? He took a long drink of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the light as he tilted the glass. For a moment, I thought he might not answer me at all. The shipment at the northern docks, he finally said, his voice low. We intercepted it tonight. We? My men and I. He set the glass down, running a hand through his dark hair. It went badly. A chill ran through me. What do you mean, badly? The Castillos were expecting us. His eyes met mine, sharp and sudden. Someone warned them. The implication hung in the air between us. I felt my face flush with indignation. It wasn't me, I said firmly. I haven't spoken to anyone outside this house in 2 weeks. I haven't even made a phone call. Antonio studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. I know. You're the only one I'm certain didn't betray me. Relief washed through me, followed quickly by concern. Your men, are they all right? A shadow crossed his face. 2 dead, 3 injured, including Marco. I'm so sorry. I reached for his hand instinctively, squeezing it. His skin was cool to the touch. Was it Devin? No, his fingers curled around mine. Miller wasn't there, but Victor Castillo's eldest son was. Mateo. His jaw tightened. The one responsible for my sister's death. I remembered what he'd told me, that Mateo Castillo had murdered a witness, and Antonio's sister had seen it happen. Did you? I couldn't finish the question. Kill him? Antonio shook his head. No. He escaped. But his days are numbered now. The coldness in his voice sent a shiver down my spine, reminding me of who he was, what he was capable of. We sat in silence for a moment, his hand still holding mine. I was acutely aware of how close we were, how unusual it was to see him like this. His defenses lowered, his carefully maintained control slipping. You should rest, I said gently. It's late. He looked at me, something unreadable in his dark eyes. You've been worried. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. Yes. Why? The question caught me off guard. Because I care what happens to you. He seemed genuinely surprised by my answer. After everything you know about me, what I am, what I do? I considered my next words carefully. I know you're a man with blood on his hands. I know you operate outside the law, but I also know you've shown me more kindness and respect than anyone has in a very long time. I withdrew my hand from his, suddenly self-conscious. I'm not naive, Antonio. I understand what your business entails. But I've seen enough of your character to know that there's more to you than violence and power. He was silent for so long that I thought I'd overstepped. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. In my world, Elena, people don't usually see beyond the surface. They fear me, respect me, hate me, but they don't see me. He touched my cheek, the gesture so light I barely felt it. You do. Somehow you do. The moment hung between us, charged with unspoken feelings. I wasn't sure who moved first, perhaps we both did, but suddenly his lips were on mine, gentle at first, then with increasing urgency. His hands framed my face and I found myself leaning into him, drawn by a need I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge until now. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, I saw confusion and desire warring in his eyes. I shouldn't have done that, he said, though he made no move to pull away further. Why not? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because you're under my protection. His thumb traced my lower lip. Because you're vulnerable, and I promised myself I wouldn't take advantage of that. I'm not as fragile as you think, I replied, covering his hand with mine. And I know my own mind, Antonio. He searched my face, looking for any sign of hesitation or fear. Finding none, he pulled me close again, this time his kiss deeper, more confident. I wound my arms around his neck, losing myself in the sensation of being wanted by this complicated, dangerous man who had somehow become my sanctuary. Later, much later, I lay in Antonio's bed, watching the play of moonlight across the ceiling. He slept beside me, one arm draped protectively across my waist, his breathing deep and even. In sleep, his face relaxed, the hard lines of authority and control softening. I studied him, trying to reconcile the fearsome man I'd first met with the one who had touched me with such tenderness, who had whispered my name like a prayer. I should have been conflicted, ashamed perhaps. Instead, I felt a strange peace. For the first time in years, I felt safe, truly safe. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd found that safety in the arms of a man most people feared. I must have drifted off eventually, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and Antonio was gone. A note on his pillow told me he'd gone to the hospital to check on Marco, and would return by afternoon. I showered and dressed in clothes I found in his closet, a simple shirt that smelled like him and hung to my knees. In the kitchen, Mrs. Petrelli raised an eyebrow at my attire but said nothing, simply handing me a cup of coffee and a plate of breakfast. "Mr. Salvatore called," she said as I ate. "He'll be back around 2. In the meantime, he asked that you remain inside. Is everything all right?" I asked. A hint of a smile. "I believe Mr. Salvatore is more than all right this morning, despite the events of last night." I blushed, realizing she knew exactly where I'd spent the night. "Mrs. Petrelli, she held up a hand. "It's not my place to comment on Mr. Salvatore's personal life. I've known him since he was a boy. I've never seen him as content as he's been since you arrived." She patted my hand. "Just be careful, dear. His world is more dangerous than you know." I nodded, sobered by her warning. "I understand." After breakfast, I wandered back to Antonio's bedroom, drawn by the lingering sense of him there. It was a masculine space, dark woods, leather, subtle colors. On the nightstand was a small silver frame containing the same photograph I'd seen in his study, Antonio with his sister and niece. I picked it up, studying the faces more closely now. His sister had been beautiful, with the same striking dark eyes as her brother. The little girl, Lucia, was all smiles, her small hand clutched in her uncle's. Looking at Antonio in the photo, younger, more carefree, I felt a pang of sadness for all he'd lost. I was replacing the frame when I noticed something on the floor near the bed, a small USB drive that must have fallen from his pocket. I picked it up, intending to leave it on his desk in the study, when a thought occurred to me. What if it contained information about last night, about who might have betrayed him? Curiosity got the better of me. In the study, I found Antonio's laptop and inserted the drive. It contained a single video file. I hesitated, then clicked play. The screen showed a warehouse interior, grainy security footage, men moving crates, armed guards patrolling. I recognized the northern docks from the distinctive roof trusses. This must have been from last night. Suddenly, the footage showed a man entering the frame, tall, dressed in dark clothing, speaking to one of the guards. Even in the poor quality video, I recognized him immediately. Devin. My blood ran cold. Devin was working directly with the Castillos at the docks, which meant... Find anything interesting? I whirled around to find Antonio standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I hadn't heard him come in. "Antonio, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have..." He crossed the room swiftly, closing the laptop. "No, you shouldn't have." His voice was cold, all traces of last night's warmth gone. "I was just trying to help," I said weakly. "By going through my personal files?" He pocketed the USB drive. "What exactly were you looking for, Elena?" "Nothing. I found the drive on the floor and was curious." I met his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "I saw Devin in that footage. He was there last night, at the docks." Antonio's jaw tightened. "Yes, he was." "Did you know he would be there?" I suspected. A terrible thought struck me. Is that why you took me in? Because you knew Devin was connected to the Castillo's operation at the docks? I took a step back from him. Was any of this real? Or was I just a convenient source of information? Pain flashed across his face. "Elena, tell me the truth," I demanded, my voice breaking. "Did you know who I was before I came to work here? Did you orchestrate this whole thing?" He was silent for a long moment, and in that silence I found my answer. "You did," I whispered, a coldness spreading through my chest. "This was all planned." "Not all of it," he said finally. "Not last night. Not how I feel about you." I laughed bitterly. How convenient. Listen to me, he said, reaching for me, but I backed away. Yes, I knew who you were when you applied for the job. I knew Miller was Castillo's man, and that you'd left him. I thought you might have information. That's true. His eyes held mine, imploring me to understand. But everything that's happened since then, everything between us, that was never part of any plan. I wanted to believe him, part of me did, but the betrayal cut too deep. I need to go, I said, moving toward the door. Elena, wait. He caught my arm. Let me go, Antonio. I pulled away. I need time to think. Something in my voice must have convinced him, because he released me, though his expression was anguished. Don't leave the grounds. Please. It's not safe. I nodded curtly and fled to my room. Not the guest room I'd been using, but the small maid's quarters I'd occupied before everything changed. I needed the familiarity, the reminder of who I really was in this world of power and deception. I sat on the narrow bed, tears streaming down my face. How could I have been so foolish? I'd let myself believe in a fairy tale, that a powerful man like Antonio Salvatore had seen something special in me, had wanted to protect me for my own sake. The truth was far more pragmatic. I'd been a tool, a means to an end in his vendetta against the Castillos, and yet, I couldn't deny what I'd felt in his arms last night. The tenderness in his touch, the way he'd looked at me as if I were precious. Had that all been an act too? A soft knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. I wiped my eyes hastily. Elena? Mrs. Petrelli's voice. May I come in? I opened the door to find the housekeeper looking concerned. Are you all right, dear? Mr. Salvatore told me you were upset. Did you know? I asked her directly. Did you know he planned this from the beginning? She sighed, coming in and closing the door behind her. I knew he had his reasons for hiring you, yes. But I also know he's changed since you came here. She took my hand. I've worked for the Salvatore family for 40 years, Elena. I've never seen Antonio look at anyone the way he looks at you. Not once. I wanted to believe Mrs. Petrelli. She had no reason to lie to me, and in the short time I'd known her, she'd never been anything but straightforward. But my trust had been broken too many times before. I need some time, I told her. To think. To process all this. She nodded, patting my hand. Of course you do. But don't let pride keep you from hearing him out, Elena. The truth is rarely simple in this house. She rose to leave, then paused at the door. Whatever you decide, know that you've brought something back to this place that's been missing for a long time. Hope. After she left, I sat in silence, turning over everything in my mind. The rational part of me knew I should be angry, should walk away from Antonio and this entire situation. But my heart kept returning to the way he'd held me, the vulnerability I'd glimpsed beneath his carefully constructed armor. Night fell, and still I remained in the small room, unable to make a decision. A knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. Elena? Antonio's voice, low and hesitant. Please let me explain. I took a deep breath and opened the door. He stood there, his usual imposing presence somehow diminished, uncertainty in his eyes. May I come in? I stepped aside, allowing him to enter the small space. He looked out of place here, this powerful man in my modest quarters, surrounded by the few possessions I'd brought with me from my old life. I owe you the complete truth, he said, remaining standing as there was nowhere for him to sit besides the bed. Will you hear me out? I nodded, wrapping my arms around myself. 6 months ago, one of my informants inside the Castillo organization mentioned a new courier, Devin Miller, former hotel security, trusted with sensitive information. I had him watched, learned about his connection to you. He paused, his eyes never leaving mine. When he attacked you and you fled, I saw an opportunity. I arranged for you to hear about the job opening here. So it was all a setup from the beginning, I said, the confirmation still painful despite having already guessed the truth. At first, yes, he admitted. I needed information about the Castillos, and I believed you had it. I had no idea what kind of person you were, what you'd been through. His voice softened. I didn't expect to care about you, Elena. I didn't expect to see myself in your determination to survive, to start over. And I certainly didn't expect to fall in love with you. The words hung in the air between us. Love. Had anyone ever loved me? Certainly not Devon, despite his possessive claims. Perhaps my mother, in her distracted way. How can I believe anything you say now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He moved closer, not touching me but near enough that I could feel the warmth of him, because I have never said those words to any woman before, because I have spent 10 years consumed by revenge, unable to see past it until you showed me there could be something more. His hand reached for mine, tentative. Because I am terrified of losing you, now that I've found you. I looked into his eyes, searching for deception and finding only raw honesty. Slowly, I placed my hand in his. I want to believe you, I said. But how do I know this isn't just another manipulation? You don't, he said simply. That's what trust is, Elena. A leap of faith. He squeezed my hand gently. I'm asking you to take that leap with me. Stay, give me a chance to prove that what we have is real. I hesitated, torn between self-preservation and the undeniable pull I felt toward this complicated man. If I stay, I said slowly, it has to be as your equal. No more secrets. No more half-truths. I need to know everything. About your business. About your plans for the Castillos. About Devon. Everything. Antonio nodded, his expression solemn. You have my word. And I need to know that when this is over, when you've dealt with the Castillos, I'll still have a place in your life. That I'm not just a means to an end. His free hand came up to cut my cheek. Elena, when this is over, if you'll have me, I want you by my side forever, not as my employee or my asset, but as my partner. The sincerity in his voice broke through my last defenses. I stepped into his embrace, letting his arms encircle me, drawing strength from his solid presence. I'm still angry with you, I mumbled against his chest. I felt rather than saw his smile. I know. You have every right to be. And you have a lot to make up for. I know that too. He tilted my face up to his. Let me start now. His kiss was gentle, asking rather than demanding, and I found myself responding despite my lingering hurt. In that moment, I made my choice. I would trust him, not blindly, but with my eyes wide open to who and what he was. Later, as we lay together in his bed, Antonio held me close, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. Tell me about the Castillos, I said. About what happens next. He sighed, his chest rising and falling beneath my cheek. Victor Castillo has been losing ground for years. The shipment we intercepted last night was meant to be his big comeback. A major drug delivery worth millions. Even though we didn't capture it all, we disrupted their operation significantly. And Devon? What's his role in all this? Miller has become one of Victor's trusted lieutenants, handling security for their more sensitive operations. He's dangerous, Elena. More dangerous than you realize. I thought of Devon's temper, how it had escalated over time, how even when he'd hit me, he'd seemed almost surprised by his own violence. I believe it, I said quietly. We need to move quickly now, Antonio continued. The Castillos will regroup, and they'll be looking for whoever betrayed them. It won't take them long to trace it back to me. And to me, I added, a chill running through me. He pulled me closer. I won't let them touch you. What's your plan? We have another opportunity in 3 days. The Castillos are holding a meeting at one of their warehouses. All the key players will be there, including Victor himself. If we can catch them with evidence of their operation, we can end this once and for all. By end this, you mean? I left the question hanging, not sure I wanted to hear the answer. Antonio was silent for a moment. I've spent 10 years planning my revenge against the man who murdered my sister and niece. I've dreamed of watching him suffer, of making him feel the pain I felt. His voice hardened, then softened again as he looked down at me. But now, for the first time, I'm considering another path. What path? I asked, surprised. I have enough evidence of the Castillos' operations to put Victor and his sons away for life. Information I've been gathering for years, waiting for the perfect moment to use it. His fingers continued their gentle path along my skin. I could give it all to the federal authorities. Let them do what I've wanted to do myself for so long. I pushed myself up on one elbow to look at him. Why would you consider that now, after all this time? His dark eyes met mine. Because revenge means nothing if I lose you in the process. And I'm not foolish enough to think you could build a life with me if I have more blood on my hands. The realization of what he was saying, that he was willing to set aside his decade-long quest for vengeance for me, was overwhelming. No one had ever put me first like that. I don't want to change who you are, I said softly. I just want you to survive this. I want us to have a future. He pulled me down for a kiss. Then that's what we'll work toward, together. The next morning, Antonio called a meeting of his most trusted lieutenants. I sat beside him at the head of the table, nervous but determined to play my part. Marco was there, his arm in a sling from the injuries he'd sustained at the docks. He nodded to me respectfully, and I realized Antonio must have told them about my new position. We have 72 hours to prepare, Antonio told the assembled men. Our target is the Castillo meeting at Warehouse 17, but this operation will be different from what we've done before. The men exchanged glances, clearly curious. We're not going in for a confrontation, Antonio continued. Our goal is evidence collection only. We get what we need, then we deliver it to our contact at the FBI. Murmurs of surprise rippled around the table. This was clearly not what they had expected. Boss, one of the men, Vito, I'd learned his name was, spoke up. We've been after the Castillos for years. Why hand them over to the feds now? Antonio's expression remained calm. Because it's the smart play. Victor has too many corrupt cops on his payroll. The only way to ensure he goes down for good is to make it federal. He didn't mention his personal reasons for the change in strategy, and I felt a surge of admiration for his leadership. The meeting continued, with Antonio outlining the details of the plan. I listened carefully, asking questions when needed, offering what insights I could about Devon's habits and patterns. By the end, I felt like a true part of the team, not just Antonio's woman. As the men filed out, Marco hung back, approaching us. Miss Elena, he said formally, I owe you an apology. When you first came here, I thought you were... He paused, clearly searching for a polite word. A complication? I supplied with a small smile. He nodded, looking relieved. Yes, I didn't understand what the boss saw in you. Now I do. He glanced at Antonio. She's good for you, keeps you grounded. Antonio smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. She does at that. After Marco left, Antonio turned to me. Are you all right with all this? It's not too late to step back, to let me handle it alone. I shook my head firmly. We're in this together now. Besides, I know Devon better than anyone. I can help. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. You're a remarkable woman, Elena Russo. And don't you forget it, I teased, though my heart was racing with a mixture of fear and determination. The next 2 days were a flurry of preparation. I worked closely with Antonio, reviewing blueprints of the warehouse, memorizing escape routes, learning to use the small transmitter I would wear to record conversations. We were leaving nothing to chance. On the night before the operation, we lay in bed together, a nervous energy humming between us. Are you scared? I asked him, tracing the scar along his jawline. No, he replied, then reconsidered. Yes. Not for myself, but for you. If anything happened to you, nothing will, I assured him, with more confidence than I felt. The plan is solid. I'll be in and out before anyone knows I was there. He pulled me closer. Just remember, the moment you get what we need, you leave. No heroics, no delays. I promise. I pressed my lips to his. This time tomorrow, it will all be over. The Castillos will be finished, and we can start our new life. Our new life, he repeated, as if testing the words. I like the sound of that. Morning came too quickly. I dressed in the clothes we'd chosen for my role. Smart, but understated, the kind of outfit that wouldn't draw attention. Antonio helped me with the wire, his fingers brushing against my skin as he secured the small device. Ready? He asked, his eyes searching mine. I nodded, swallowing my fear. Ready. We drove separately to the location. Me in an inconspicuous sedan, Antonio and his men in various vehicles positioned strategically around the warehouse district. The plan was simple, but dangerous. I would gain access to the warehouse using the identity we'd created, a potential buyer interested in the Castillo's distribution network. With my wire recording, I would get them to discuss their operation openly, providing the evidence we needed. Meanwhile, Antonio's men would be monitoring from outside, ready to extract me at the first sign of trouble. As I parked a block away from the warehouse, I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I'd rehearsed this dozens of times with Antonio. I knew what to say, how to act. But now, faced with the reality of walking into a nest of vipers, my confidence wavered. My phone buzzed with a text message. "Antonio, I love you. Come back to me." Those simple words restored my resolve. I typed back, "Always," and stepped out of the car. The warehouse loomed ahead, seemingly ordinary from the outside. 2 men stood guard at the entrance, scanning the area with practiced vigilance. I approached confidently, showing no hint of the fear churning inside me. "I'm here to see Mr. Castillo," I said, using the slight accent we'd practiced. "I have an appointment." One of the guards checked a list, then nodded. "ID?" I handed over the flawless fake we'd prepared. He examined it, then handed it back. "This way." As I followed him into the warehouse, I sent up a silent prayer. For Antonio, for myself, for the future we'd dared to imagine together. Whatever happened in the next hour would determine whether that future was possible, or whether it would remain just a beautiful dream. The warehouse door closed behind me with a finality that sent a shiver down my spine. There was no turning back now.